Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. My name is Donovan from Salt of the Streets, and I'm here to bring you yet another video, this time about 2024, the debate. And I'm going to be honest, this is the third time that I've done this intro because in the 2 weeks that I've tried to record and edit this video, I have had major producerial mistakes as well as an insane amount of updates that this story is just changing all the time. So initially, this video was going to be talk about the debate and kind of some breakdown, and then I was going to sit down and speak with Josh Keaton and then talk to Larry, and I was going to kind of go from there and kind of compare and contrast what they were saying about the debate and kind of what their thoughts were. Larry's a little more conservative, Josh is a little more liberal, and we're just going to go from there, and I thought that was going to be a really great video. In the middle of doing that, I had to end up paying for Zoom Pro or whatever, because apparently it's not free anymore like it used to be. And in the process of doing that, I put in my credit card information, and of course all of my buttons are hotkeyed to different screens on OBS. And so when I did that, I changed to the waiting screen, which I can actually show you here. So for the last 90 minutes of the 2-hour recording that I did with Josh Keaton, it is the waiting screen. And I discovered yesterday while editing that you can hear what he's saying, but not what I'm saying because of the way the audio is routed in there, but it's also done over all of the music that you just heard. So instead, what I have for you is initially a quick update on all the stories and the things that are going on here that has caused the delays in this video, and then I have for you kind of some of my thoughts on the debate, what I did do with Josh Keaton, that you will see there, and then my full breakdown of the debate, some different timestamps, discussions. I know that this is delayed, but I still feel like this video is very much worth it, not only because I put time into it, because I have kind of some unique takes about the debate and kind of the way that things are going and kind of potential ideas. So I really think this video is still worth your time. I really hope that you enjoy it. Of course, I want to make sure that you like, subscribe, and share it with your friends so this channel can continue to grow. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/saltofthestreets. That's where you get the uncut access to the SOS IDs, as well as the articles that I'm writing and stuff like that, the short story that I'm working on. You get early access to all of these things, as well as some of these extra video content. And so we have a couple different tiers there that you guys can check out, but go there, and all of the support helps. So what I want to talk about first is some of the reasons that this video has been delayed, right? So I did a debate video, I watched the debate a couple times, and then I recorded with Josh Keaton just a couple days after that, and then things just continued to happen, right? As you'll see, we'll go over in more detail in this video some things that happened in the debate. I'm sure you guys have heard some of the general takes by now, but we'll go into more detail and kind of exact things, break down some stories, watch some videos. I really hope you enjoy it. But as I said, in the process of recording or editing this video, there just continued to be updates. So just a few days after the debate itself, the fallout continued over Biden's performance. People are very concerned. He looks horrible. I mean, the Democrats on all the channels, we talked about this in the video, that they're circling the waters, right? They're going after him. Everything that we have talked about for the last 2 years in the show about the concerns about his age and his ability to perform the task, all of these things are brought up to the light on MSNBC and CNN, all the things we never thought that we would see. And then there start to be leaks, right? There starts to be more and more things that are coming out. And so I have a bunch of articles that we're going to look at just really, really quick to kind of get a better idea of how quickly exactly all of these things happened. So we're going to start here. This was just on July 8th, as you can see, just a couple days after the debate. Parkinson's specialist met with Biden's physician at the White House earlier this year, a record show. So someone's starting to leak White House visitor logs that are showing that there's a Parkinson's specialist that has been to the White House, 3 times this year, according to the visitor logs, but apparently why he was there is still up in the air. We're not exactly sure the purpose of his visit. So, that's left up to us in our own devices. And then there start to be some really serious Democrats that are coming out, right? Immediately there are people across the spectrum, across the Democratic spectrum, that are expressing concerns about Joe Biden and his ability to perform, as we talked about the different MSNBC pundits and all this type of stuff, right? They're already coming out. And just in the last few days, we're seeing some really kind of big wigs of the Democratic Party coming out with these concerns, right? So this one is Adam Schiff says that Biden should drop out, citing serious concerns about his ability to beat Donald Trump. This one is about Schumer and Pelosi. This is also on the 17th, right? So they're doing the same thing. They're increasing pressure on Biden to step down. And this is not for him to step down as president, but for him to step down from the race, right? They don't think that he can beat Donald Trump anymore. And that would, I think they knew that beforehand, but they were just kind of going to push and do whatever they could. And after that debate performance, there's no denying it. Something else that happened, obviously, in between that time and now, there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump that has, surged him in the polls. He is essentially winning in every state, from my understanding now, that there's no question that he is going to win this race. And so it doesn't appear that there's really anything that the Democrats can do. And so I think they're definitely going to pull him. As we'll see, they're starting to get kind of more extreme about this, and so we'll keep going the rest of these articles, right? This is even Obama is in there. Obama and Pelosi privately expressed concerns over Biden. These private conversations they're having, they've spoken privately about Joe Biden and the future of his 2024 campaign. Both the former president and the ex-speaker expressed concerns about how much harder they think it's becoming for the president to beat Donald Trump. Neither is quite sure what to do. This one's from Axios, right? This was just a few days ago because things are starting to get really scary. What is Joe Biden doing? He's given some other speeches a few days after the debate, the same things are being seen. He's calling himself the first black vice president to do this. I mean, he's getting people's names wrong. He's introducing Zelensky as Vladimir Putin. I mean, it's bad. It's happening all over the place. It's just worse and worse and worse all the time. So this is on the 17th. It's crazy how all these things have. This is the 19th today, as you can see the bottom of my screen. If you can see that there. And so this is just 2 days ago that all of these things are starting to come out. They are really, really gunning for him now. Biden says that he's going to drop out of the 2024 race if he's diagnosed with a medical condition, right? And they're talking about something more serious, like Parkinson's, right? Like we're saying, this says in a new interview that he said he would consider dropping out of the 2024 presidential race if a doctor diagnosed him with a medical condition. And this is also after he's done an interview with Lester Holt. He's done a horrific interview with George Stephanopoulos. It's the same deal. It's just showing this continued degradation of who this man used to be and scaring people more and more that he might actually continue to hold this office, and the fact that he holds it now. The same day that we find out, this is from the 19th, this is the details about his treatment, but I believe that we found out initially on the 17th that he had COVID-19. The same day that he said that he's going to step down if he has a serious medical condition, he has COVID-19, right? He's had COVID-19 before, so this is not, I guess not COVID, whatever it is, he has COVID. He's had it before, so I don't know if they're qualifying this as a serious medical condition or if this is whatever. I guess it depends on, how he comes out of it. Something really funny, a side note, when Joe Biden was diagnosed with COVID, what's her name, Joy Reid on MSNBC, she is talking to Jen Psaki, and they're talking about Joe Biden having COVID and, Donald Trump, and he got shot, and it was incredible that we saw for some reason that Donald Trump was able to have this moment on stage and put his fist up and stuff like this. She says, if Joe Biden at 80 years old recovers from COVID in the next 3 days, isn't that the same feat as surviving the shooting? Like having fucking COVID is the same thing as someone trying to blow your fucking head off. It's a crazy thing. And so the next one that we have here, same from Axios, same day, right? This one's from yesterday. Behind the curtain, top Dems now believe that Biden will exit. I just read this last night as I'm putting the children down, so I don't know what time this was posted. Let's see if they have the time on here. If they don't, that is okay. But as I'm going to bed, it's like 6:30. Pacific time, that I'm seeing this, that now there's reports that Joe Biden is looking like over the weekend he's going to step down. I'm freaking out because I'm trying to get this fucking video done. I'm trying to have this be something relevant. So we're doing this, and this is several top Democrats privately tell us the rising pressure of party congressional leaders and close friends will persuade President Biden to decide to drop out of the presidential race as soon as this weekend. Why it matters, the 81-year-old president, now self-isolating with COVID, remains publicly dug in, but privately he resigned to mounting pressure, bad polls, and untenable scrutiny, making it impossible to continue his campaign, the Democrats tell us. Behind the scenes, the private message distilled to its bluntest form, the top leaders of this party, his friends and key donors, believe he can't win, can't change public perceptions of his age and acuity, and can't deliver congressional majorities. He can't. All of this is true. But they are, like I said, they are fucking gunning for him. While this is happening, there is, of course, the chaos that we discussed. What the fuck are they going to do? What are they going to do? We're going to get into more of this in the video. I think I'll talk to Josh a little bit about it. I know that I'll talk about it when I'm breaking up the debate, and I'm going to give you my prediction here in just a minute. But there's all these concerns. What are they going to do? There's no way that Kamala Harris could possibly win. She has been polling worse than Joe Biden the whole time that they've been in office. She has zero hope. Nobody likes her. No one, even the Democrats, want her, because there's reports now that even Joe Biden is not willing to endorse Kamala Harris when he steps down out of the race. They didn't like her in the first place. She was literally used as a token to get in the race, so to get in the office. How does everybody think now? They don't actually even fucking like her. All these people who championed her, and this is amazing, and the first black woman vice president, and all this stuff, we're breaking ceilings. Actually, they fucking used her like an object. How the fuck do you feel now? They love black people, right? They love minorities. They don't fucking care about you. They don't care about anything. They especially don't care about you. They will use you like an object, even if they make you the fucking vice president. They don't give a fuck about you. Now that they're here, they don't even want to put her in. There's another aspect that whoever goes in is totally fucked. Whoever takes Joe Biden's place in the Democratic position is not going to win against Donald Trump because of the way that He's polling right now. The shooting, I mean, the way that people are polarizing around him, or centralizing around him, focusing around him, whatever the exact correct verbiage is, I don't see any way that anybody defeats Donald Trump in the 2024 race. You might as well just do it now. But we will get there. So as these discussions go on with Kamala Harris, or about Kamala Harris, right? We have this one last article here. Black Democrats resisting calls for Biden exit insist Harris is the only alternative, but they know that she can't fucking win. That's why they don't want her. She could never win. There's no way. It's impossible. Impossible. But here we are. So now there is all of these discussions. What are they going to do? How are they going to handle this? I have one last thing. It's from Charlie Kirk. He was at the RNC in Milwaukee, and he talked about this. While Donald Trump, this is a post from Charlie Kirk's Instagram that is actually a bunch of his tweets, I think. While Donald Trump gives the Republican Party its most unity since 9/11, a source has spoken to Democrats in the last 24 hours, and the party is in a state of utter collapse. Kamala isn't ready, and her staff aren't ready. They don't know if Biden has her back. Democrat lawmakers are 100% that Biden is gone, yet haven't actually gotten Biden to submit. They're just confident that increasingly ugly tactics will force him out. One of the words Democrats are using is landslide. The entire party is oscillating between panic and doom. He says, glad I was in Milwaukee this week. And then he says, the second 4 years of Donald J. Trump will make the first four pale in comparison by what we're now able to accomplish as one united conservative movement. We have joy, we have gratitude, we have God. May God bless the USA. May God bless President Trump and his entire family. We must win. So I'm telling you, the Democratic Party is, as Charlie Kirk is saying, they are crumbling. I hate to do this. I hate to, but I love it at the same time. I fucking called this when I talked to Josh. I called this when we were talking a few months ago. They have no choice. He cannot win. They have no choice but to do an open convention, and that's what it's looking like now. It's, from what I hear, Joe Biden is sounding like he is going to endorse a open convention as it is. So I just don't know what they are going to do. My personal prediction, as I told Josh, I thought that they had no choice but to go for an open convention. I think if they're smart, let me start with this. I don't think there's any way that Donald Trump doesn't win now, no matter who it is. Prior to the assassination attempt, I genuinely believed that if the Democrats had not completely shat on RFK Jr. this entire time, they could have brought him into the race and he could have potentially won. Like, I've seen polling prior to the assassination that indicated that he could beat Donald Trump. And I think that there's a decent argument for that. There's a lot of shit that I like about RFK. There's a lot of stuff that I don't like about him, though there's a lot of things that I like about him that I think he's very reasonable on, but I just don't know that I don't know that that will work now, even if they are able to get him as a party. Like, if they're able to centralize around him, I don't think that he's going to be able to beat Donald Trump. I think that that's resigned to victory at this point. That's my personal opinion on this. I'm locking it in now. I'm tired of all this stuff. I like things happen. I'm like, oh man, I called this time ago. But I'm telling you now, that's what I think. I think Donald Trump is winning. I don't think it matters who goes in. If I had to guess on who the Democratic nominee is going to be, that's what I'm talking about. I think that it will be Kamala. I think it will be her. I think if they're going in a open convention like that, I think it's going to be Kamala Harris, because she just checks too many boxes, like, nobody actually likes her, but nobody has ever liked her. From the beginning, nobody liked her. Even when she first got in, the people that I talked to that were proud that she was now going to be for the vice president, that she's breaking these things, they didn't actually like her. So I think that she goes in, I think she fucking loses. And man, vice president, who I think they pick as her VP. I would like to think that they would try for a double lady ticket, but I think the Democratic Party knows that they're doomed. They don't want to ruin two lady politicians' careers at one time. Oh man. maybe like Dean Phillips or something, right? Dean Phillips was running. I'm pretty sure that's his name. He was running in the Democratic primaries. Maybe they pull him up because they don't give a fuck about him either. I don't know, man. Because I also don't trust that a open convention will be open as it is. You know, the DNC has a history of finagling and using the superdelegates and kind of doing whatever they want to make sure that their candidate gets in. So, man, at this particular moment, I'm going to talk about it again in the assassination video, which is going to come in like, probably 10 days or something like that. I'm going to post this one tomorrow. It's Friday and it's going to come on Saturday morning. So in like 10 days, I'll have the assassination video done. I'm waiting purposefully so I can get more information, so I can give a proper timeline and do all this type of stuff. So that's why I'm waiting for that one. But I'll talk about this more then because there'll be more updates. I think it's come on. I think the Democrats are so fucking stupid that they really will pull her in that convention. They'll really vote her in, select her, the delegates, because they're that fucking stupid. That's what I think. So those are the updates that I have on Joe Biden as of right now. The DNC, on what their plan is, on the party, on 2024. As of this moment is the 19th. It's 9:14 p.m. Pacific time. That's what I have for you. That's the most up-to-date that I could possibly get with this. I don't want to delay this anymore, or else this video is going to be even longer than it already is. So this video that you're about to watch here, what you're going to see, as I said earlier, the first thing is going to be my general takes on the debate. This is kind of what I thought. This is the things that I gleaned from it. Immediately after that, there's going to be my conversation with Josh. It's like about 25 minutes of his take kind of on the debate, and we got into some of these topics, and then he has to charge his laptop, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect because I need to pay for Zoom, and you'll see it kind of fade out, and it's bad news, right? Like I said, I made mistakes. Mistakes were made that day, but it will get better. And then after that, after my discussion with Josh, there's my full breakdown of the debate. It is not the entire debate. I cut pieces out of it. We skipped through it. I'm getting better at producing these things, so it is not the full 2 hours or whatever the debate was. I cut good chunks out of it. So it is just good discussion, some good ideas there, especially around taxes and budgets and how we're going to collect these things. So I really, really, really hope that you guys enjoy that, because the next video that I'm going to have is going to be on the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. We will talk about the timeline, some theories, some potential ideas on what's going on there. And then after that, I still do have the intent to recreate this video with Josh Keaton and with Larry about 2024, especially now that things are so different. And I'll probably do that next month or the month after, and we'll have that out for you. Larry had some big life changes that also happened. I don't know if I mentioned that. Hopefully I didn't blow up his spot when I did that, but Larry had some stuff go on so that I couldn't record with him anyway after I messed up with Josh, so it was all kind of kismet. Josh doesn't know yet, as of right now that I'm recording this, that I made this mistake. I'm going to tell him before I put this video out. Hopefully, Josh, you still want to be my friend and will still make videos with me. I promise that I won't let it happen again. So with that, I really hope that you guys enjoy this video. I hope that you like the takes that we have here. And again, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, and share. Tell all your friends about it. So going through these changes, the updates, and stuff like that. But I'm just really still trying to make sure that I'm getting stuff out for you guys. Videos and things that I enjoy, that I'm interested in, that I think you're going to be interested in. So thank you very much. And I hope that you enjoy the video.
I am going to talk about just some of my general takes, right? Well, the first thing I want to start with is something that Josh Keaton actually said on his Instagram story. As we know, he does all kinds of like polls and things like this that are generally political, but all kinds of stuff that goes on there. But he said, and this is a quote, maybe the most consequential debate since Kennedy versus Nixon. And I think that he is probably right on that. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, this is the first televised debate, right? So this is the first time that people are able to see instead of just hear their candidates. Richard Nixon was very, very confident. He presented very well on the radio, but of course we all know that JFK was very handsome. He also spoke very well, and when we saw the two of them compared on TV, Richard Nixon is sweaty, he looks nervous, he's not as attractive as JFK. The comparison between the two swings the votes way over to JFK, and the rest is history that we have JFK as president. He's killed a few years later, and of course Richard Nixon. Anyway, as Josh was saying, or as Josh said, this is potentially the most, I got lost there. I wasn't sure exactly how far I want to go down the Richard Nixon train and decided that it was no longer relevant. So just so you guys know, I do know what I'm talking about, but it didn't seem like we needed to really talk about that right now. We'll talk about Richard Nixon on a different day. As far as the way that a debate went, the structure benefited Donald Trump completely. The fact that there was no audience, there's no one for Donald Trump to play off of. It is just him and Joe Biden, and and the host in the room. So there's no one there for him to build energy off of, for him to hit Donald Trump, or for him to hit Joe Biden, which he only did maybe one time on his age and stuff like that. There's nobody there to hype him up, for him to continue to like feed off of and try and build his energy. So Donald Trump stayed pretty consistent the entire time. We'll see kind of as he walks out, he's just, he's confident, he just has the regular demeanor, I'm the shit, you know, and he just carries this through the whole thing. As well, the fact that the microphones were cut off after the candidates were finished speaking. It didn't benefit Donald Trump to continue to try and talk and interrupt Joe Biden or try and call him out after the microphones were already cut, because no one was going to be able to hear him, right? In the same vein, as far as the audience goes, there's no one for Joe Biden to build off of. So whatever energy he has when he first starts, that's it. And we'll see, I think I wrote down like what he's maybe 20 minutes in and things start to really get bad. And then an hour in, he's mumbling, it's nearly incoherent. Donald Trump calls him out at one point, really just one time. But I think that in an attempt to try and help Joe Biden, the DNC actually shot him in the foot by structuring the debates in a way that heavily favored Donald Trump. And because he hasn't been in office for almost 3 years, he really just kind of had to sit back and just answer the questions. Like, there's not a whole lot for him to deal with. You know, he isn't running anything right now. His policies are very well washed out for the most part. There's very few things that are still lingering that we can attribute to him as to why the country is the way that it is. So it's a very simple task for Donald Trump, or it was for him to just sit back, answer the charges that come to him, and they're all things that he can already see coming. There's nothing new here, because like I said, he hasn't been in office for 3.5 years. So there's nothing new that's coming up for him. It's just these legal cases, all the stuff that he's already been dealing with, things that people have been defending him for, and he's been defending himself for months or years now. There's nothing new that's going on here. This is a very, very easy thing for Donald Trump. Joe Biden is president right now. On a day-to-day basis, things that are updating, things that are changing, this is up to him. He has to answer for these things, and he was really unable to do so. We saw an immense amount of lies from both people on both sides, but when I was keeping track, I mean, my list for Joe Biden was much longer than my list for Donald Trump, and partially due to the fact that he is in office right now. He has more things he has to answer for, more things that he has to lie about if he wants to look good. And I talked to Josh Keaton about this. I'm gonna paraphrase my conversation with Josh Keaton throughout this video as well as I can. I don't want to do him a disservice by misquoting him, but I also don't want you guys to miss out on the conversation that we had, because while I'm going to do my best to recreate that with him in the future, you know, conversations like that, they only really happen one time. So there's going to be things that are missed there. They're not going to be able to be brought back in the second one. So as I remember them, we're going to kind of discuss some of these points. And I did ask Josh Keaton, like, why is Joe Biden lying about all of this stuff, right? And we'll see, you guys probably watched the debate, but if you haven't, we'll watch it together in a little bit. Joe Biden brought up a lot of false statements that are attributed to Donald Trump. One of them chiefly being the very fine people on both sides thing, right? This thing that happened in Charleston, Donald Trump is there, you know, of course I completely condemn the white nationalists, but there were very fine people on both sides, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is exactly he said, we understand it is not the phrase that the Democrats, the left, has picked out for him that is. So he said there's very fine people. So yes, he did, but there's more to that. And I think that I'll pull it up later in the video. We'll take a look at it. So when I asked Josh Keaton about this, like, why is Joe Biden lying about this? I don't understand why you're lying about something that's so easy to disprove. You know, it's one thing if you're lying about statistics, because you can find a number that's going to support any statement that you want to make. But why are you lying about something that's so easy to disprove? And Josh Keaton says it was just kind of like, you know, I think people are really unhappy with the statement, that they were really displeased with the way that it went, and, you know, it should have been much better. I'm like, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. It was a dog shit statement. He could have very easily, Donald Trump just said, Nazis, fuck off, and leave it at that. You didn't have to say really anything more than that, but he did, and that's the reality of it. And I think the vast majority of us have acknowledged that it wasn't a perfect statement like he claims it was. It was really very bad, but the reality of it is what it is, and it isn't the statement that the left claims it to be. Josh Keaton is like, yeah, I just think people were really unhappy with this. Like, yeah, I agree with you, right? My question is, why is he lying? Because if I'm an undecided voter, if I'm somebody who's watching the debates, actually trying to pick out who I'm going to vote for, I'm kind of keeping a tally, right? I'm keeping a list of points for either side. Oh, that's a really good thing that I like. That's a good thing that I like. That's a good thing. Oh, that's not a bad thing. So that goes to the other person, right? So when I hear Joe Biden lie, this isn't a point for Joe Biden. This is a point against Joe Biden. Because again, if I'm an undecided voter, if I'm sitting in this like 5 to 7, maybe 10% that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are fighting over, I already kind of question the government. I already don't really believe you because I'm undecided. If I trust the government, I would be in because I would think that Donald Trump was a piece of shit and he's a liar and he's trying to take over the country. And so, of course, for the good of myself and democracy, I have no choice but to support Joe Biden. But if I don't, there's some question here, right? So when I'm seeing Joe Biden, the president of the United States, lie about a statement that I know to be false, or I almost definitely know to be false because I'm in the middle, I'm in the undecided 5, 7, 10%. When I see you lie, that isn't a point for you, there's a point against you because you've just lied to me. You've just shown me the government does lie. They are actually here to mislead me. They are actually here to try and lead me in the wrong direction. So this is a point against Joe Biden. So I don't understand the point of this thing, right? I'm not questioning, why are they lying in politics? People lie in politics all the time. This is how it's going to be. I don't understand why lie about things that are so easy to disprove. But here we are on politics. I think kind of my last note as far as general takeaways is that the difficult position that Joe Biden is in is exacerbated by the fact that unquestionably, by any metric that you can measure it by, the country is in a worse off position now than it was 4 years ago. So regardless how he's going to spin something, how he is going to try and pull statistics, we can measure them, we can see very plainly, we can tell by our own lives, our own existences, our own experiences that we are worse off. Our lives are more difficult now than they were 4 years ago. And that's why this whole spin has been coming about from the Biden administration for some time now about, things really are doing okay. Like jobs are going up and wages are going up and inflation isn't really that bad. But as we have seen many, many times, we pointed out on the show many, many times, the inflation numbers that are being used by the administration, the consumer price index numbers that they use are completely remove all of the most important things that you use. And that's why there is this deception involving inflation that comes out of the Biden administration. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Donald from Salt of the Streets. I am joined here today by my friend Josh Keaton. You guys have seen him before. He's been on the show a couple of times for many, many, many hours, longer than he ever promised to. We kept him late every time, but it was, I think, a very, very enjoyable conversation either time. So thank you for joining me, Josh. I'm very happy to have you here. And today we're going to be talking about, again, like you've seen in the first part, because I think it'll be later in the video, we're going to be talking a little bit about 2024, a little bit about the debate, some kind of general takes on that. You guys have already seen my views on it and some of the opinions that I have, but obviously, Josh, we'll get into those things a little bit. And you and I have been talking, I think, almost every day since the debate about various political things. You know, what are the Dems going to do? How are they going to handle this? How are they going to do this? And so that's kind of some of the stuff that we're going to get into as well. And also just some of the topics that they went over in the debate, some I have Jan 6 in here and stuff like that, just some general questions about things that they discussed and how 2024 is kind of going to go down. So before we get into that, do you have some general thoughts about the debate or just things you want to get out there?
I think kind of the general takeaways, the one that a lot of people took away, is the conversation of Biden's age. That's really the big thing that I think conservatives are very, obviously there's a political angle to what conservatives are going for, but I think to a lot of liberals, it was the first time that they really reckoned with the fact that oh my God, this dude is 81 going on 82, and he's about to try to continue doing the hardest job or I don't know if the hardest job, but definitely continue to be the most powerful man in the world.
Probably the most
and
stressful, I would say.
Yeah,
if not
yeah,
the hardest,
for sure.
Definitely the most stressful.
Yeah, those pictures of Lincoln before and after, it's okay. I mean, considering it was a Civil War, I'll give him that. That's yeah, that job does something to you.
Yeah.
But I think the debate was a really huge point where everyone who watched it came to the same conclusion. The debate, the actual content didn't matter. The words, the questions didn't really matter. What mattered was that millions of people saw in real time that the president of the United States was not with it. And there was and that brings about concerns, especially for a lot of people in the more liberal camp who are very, very concerned about an election. And for the first time, oh my God, the election's in 6 months and this is our guy.
So let me ask you really quick, because this is something you do the questions on your story all the time that are usually they're political, but a lot of times they're just funny, they're whatever. They're
random. They're super
great.
random.
Yeah, we talk about them all the time on the show. I really enjoy them. And so you've had some on there about the president's age and stuff like that, kind of talked about Trump, and I think we even talked about that on the show. So before the debate, what was your take on Joe Biden's age? Did you think that he was fully with it? Did you think he was missing? What's your, because obviously many people for a long time have been critical of just how he conducts himself with the perception of his capabilities. How I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth because there's a lot of different opinions on what that is. We've been open about it. I don't think that he's all there, but I think that we knew coming into office he wasn't really going to be fucking running the show. I think we kind of understood that. But before so what was your take on his age coming into the debate versus afterwards?
I think I knew he was old. And I think one of the things that I hate when people talk around the world, like dementia, and I think the reality is you grab any 81-year-old person, they're going to struggle in that position. Like it's just with age, you slow down, and that's entirely normal. And I'm not like a doctor diagnosing or anything, but I think it's just really, it was really like embarrassing. I think that's that kind of cringe feeling you get when you watch like a cringe video. It's like, oh my God. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people felt. And like, I saw this post from the New York Times where this person was like, I'm going to vote for Biden, but I feel worse about it. And I think that feeling of like this, like it just exacerbates this idea that we have two terrible choices. Yes. And like, I think there's a lot of cope of people is like, oh, well, it's an administration, right? We're not just voting for the president; we're voting for the cabinet secretaries and all those people. And I think there's still like a truth to that.
Yeah, that
but at the end of the day,
Trump, though, right? When Donald Trump was in office, no one gave a shit what his admin was going to look like. He could have picked the best. He didn't, but he could have picked the best fucking administration anybody ever saw, and it wouldn't have mattered to anybody. It would have been, he's the worst. He's going to take us all down. He's going to whatever. So I think it also continues to highlight the double standard that exists between Donald Trump and like almost any other president. And you know me, I'm not like a huge Trump guy. I'm really trying to look at it objectively because the last thing I'm trying to do is like defend Donald Trump. I've never been a Donald Trump guy. That's never been my jam. It's only the last couple of years that I've just had to be like, why are you fucking on him when this is happening all over the place? It's just the obvious stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to ignore these things because you want me to, but just to lay that, like, I've never been a Trump guy, but it's a weird, the way that he's treated compared to other people is very weird. He seems very odd to me and like more obvious as it goes on,
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is like for Trump, we had a presidency. We had him for 4 years. I think it's frustrating like conservatives talk about him like he's going to change all those things. Like we saw him in office for 4 years. He's not like a new candidate. Like we know how he's going to govern. He's going to govern very standardly conservative. Like I think like there's not a ton that he did that was outside of what a Bush would have done, outside of what like a Reagan would have done. He just governed as a center right conservative. I think it's interesting. And it's just like anyone like, and you could disagree with that, and that's fine. But I think it's just interesting how we know what his presidency was like, and we have an idea of what Biden's presidency is like. And it's like for the first time ever, since pretty much the Cleveland election of the 1800s, we're voting for two incumbents in a certain way. It's like we know what they did, we know how they've gone, and so now we're voting for. We have two options that we've tested. You've driven both cars. Which one do you want to drive again?
Right.
And so that's unique about this.
No, I think that's a really good take, and I think that's very interesting because I've not heard that from, I think, anybody else about the general take on Trump's presidency. But I think that's very interesting because it, we could debate all day about like the pendulum thing, but I think that is potentially a sign of where American politics has shifted. That like the perception of Donald Trump is that he's like an ultra hard right, crazy conservative. Like that's certainly the way that he's billed in like modern media. He's a fucking Nazi, like all this shit. Like you just said, his politics, his administration, the way he governed was like very standard conservative. There was nothing that was crazy far right. He wasn't, you could talk about the immigration stuff, but we're at that point now where like a lot of the public is like, build the fucking wall. Like, so
there was a poll that said the majority of Americans, and so it's like,
so was he a racist or was he 4 years ahead of his time? Like what what's really fucking going on? So I think that's a really interesting just view of American politics, that like the general view of it has shifted to the left, so that a regular standard conservative is viewed as a Nazi. And I think like we could talk about the pendulum thing, that it's likely to swing back in the other direction. And that's, I think, why the extreme nature of the candidates and the politicians that we choose is so important in this time, because how extreme the people we choose are will dictate how far the pendulum swings in the other direction. Obviously
Hmm.
the goal is to try and keep that swing as minimal as possible, but that's really up to us as a nation, depending on who we put in those positions. If we continue to choose a
Hmm.
bunch of like actually hard right people, it's going to swing really fucking far, and when it does, we're not going to be pleased about the way that it looks. And I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of people that also don't give that forethought to it. They're only maybe thinking about the next 4 years. They're not thinking about what this is going to do 15, 20 years down the line, 24 years down the line, whatever. And we're not going to get too deep into this, but I do want to talk to you about this at a later date. I think that gives ultra interesting context to the Supreme Court decision that came down just recently about presidential immunity. People are like very, very
Hmm.
focused on Donald Trump and he's going to do this and all this type of stuff. It's like, but when he's gone, there's going to be
Yeah.
another guy who's in that office. And if he's shittier
Hmm.
than Donald Trump, he has all of those same powers. That's really what we should be concerned about. We saw the way
Hmm.
that the government and the deep state, and for lack of a better term, handled Donald Trump, right? They kept him in check. They didn't allow him to do all of the shit that he wanted to do because they operated in the background. Like they're actively leaking information. They're having private conversations with people. They're setting up back channels. Like we saw all of that stuff happening during Donald Trump. So the people that already exist within the continuing government will not allow him to bring the nation to its knees. But in 15 years, when those people are not there anymore, when they've aged out and there's a new deep state, like for lack of a better term, that's just kind of the term I'm using to encompass the people that continue to exist in the government post whatever
Yeah.
administration is there, right? So when the new deep state is there, again, if those people are worse, like that is what is going to dictate how these powers are used. It's sad to me to watch people be caught in this cycle like this is what matters. Like this 4 years is the
Hmm.
only thing that matters when we're 30 years old now, 29, 30 years old. Like we've only done this 4 times. We're going to keep doing this for a long time. This 4 years doesn't
Yeah.
fucking matter. Like this maybe doesn't matter at all. It's very weird.
Yeah. So I think it is, especially considering that no matter what happens, both of them can't run again. So like
Yes.
2028, we're getting a fresh slate of
Yes.
liberal and conservative candidates, and so whatever powers and kind of norms that we create over the next 4 years, that will then roll over to the next person in power, and they
Yes.
could be better, they could be worse. Who knows?
Yes. And that's why, like, it's like saying that the not neutrality, but just choosing people that are not extreme on either end. We really need to. I'm not like yo moderates, but like just chill. Like just everybody chill. Just don't be so fucking
Yeah.
wild, and it will be okay. But the reactionary thing that drives people further and further to the other direction is. That's what's tearing us apart. Quite literally, that's what's tearing us apart is the force on either end of the spectrum that is trying to pull it. And
Hmm.
it's like sad to watch. It was one thing when we were kids, and everybody was doing it. Now that I'm an adult, like I'm watching other people who are twice my age, like how the fuck do you not know this? How have you not figured this out by now? You're still out here. Like it's just weird to watch people do. I
Hmm.
think maybe it's an expectation thing that like the people that I fuck with, that I spend my time with, are not like this. So why are you guys acting this way? Why are you acting so crazy? It just seems like it's so unnecessary. But when
Yeah.
people can have, I guess I've just had so many hours of reasonable conversations, like with people like you, that's like, it doesn't need to be crazy. Like you can disagree with somebody for an hour at a time, and it doesn't matter. Like you can high five them and then walk away and talk to them the very next day about something else, and it's okay. It's
Hmm.
weird to watch. Let me ask you one last question about the age thing, because you were talking about kind of the reckoning that Democrats had to have with it at the time. What do you think? I don't know exactly how to ask it, like percentage or level of whatever. Do you think there was a level of willing ignorance that was going on the part of the Democrats, kind of choosing to ignore some of the stuff that was going on with Biden in regards to like his age and his conduct and stuff like that? Or do you think they really were surprised?
I think this is based on this is what I could be wrong. I think that liberals in general are very trusting of the system. That's kind of one of the things that comes that kind of it depends on what party's in power, but like kind of I think you would think like the mid 2000s conservatives are very trusting of the system, and that kind of flipped to liberals, and I think that kind of trend continues today where liberals are very trusting of the system and liberals are very trusting of the Biden that was set up, the 10-4 Biden, as they said, where he says, hey, he's good for 10 to 10 from 10-4.
Yeah.
And I think you kept him to snippets, you keep him to readings and stuff like that, teleprompter. and he's fine. And he can do short little things here and there, and he can rally a little bit of energy. And I think that's the president a lot of people saw. Everyone knew he was old, even for the primaries. The number one concern has always been his age. But I think that was always something that was like, oh, he's old, not like he's old and this is hampering to his ability to lead. It's just he's old and it reflects like an older time period and an older way of doing things.
Yeah.
And I think for the first time, everyone, even the most like hardcore like resistance lib, saw like, oh, he is both old and old. Like he is.
Right, and I'm
And
talking
so
about because there's, we were seeing clips for like I'm gonna say 2 years, of him like the gaffes, just the continual the fuck ups while he's talking, and the blah, blah, blah. We saw a lot of it during the debate, not to be like the trips and stuff. I try not to get too hard on that type of stuff because it's when people eat shit, they're wearing like soft soled shoes and stuff like that. Like it's people eat shit, but like people have been hanging on to that stuff for a long time, and I'm willing to forgive, like especially the falling and stuff like that. So that stuff, you're wearing dress shoes, you eat shit. Like that's just a thing that happens. And when everyone is watching you all the time, there's going to be more footage of that. But so this is kind of a two-part question, right? Because I think that if they're looking at some of those videos of him talking, you got to be either really compartmentalizing or like choosing to ignore that, like it doesn't really matter. And I think if you're on the latter end of that where you're choosing to ignore that, my question then extends to like a global thing. Like maybe it doesn't matter domestically because we acknowledge that domestically the administration is handling things, but what about the message that sends to the rest of the world that like we are choosing leaders who are incoherent and that we are willing to put up like, and I'm not trying to be shitty, but like almost puppet leaders that we are acknowledging are not really in charge because their underlings are the ones that are running things. If we know that, definitely the rest of the world knows that, and what a message do you think that sends to like other countries that we're willing to do that, to put leaders up that are ineffective, that they're like almost non-existent,
Yeah, because I think one of the things I would say is kind of the job of the presidency is to reflect a certain they reflect a certain platform. And I think regardless of like the gaffes and the Biden being old, if you are a world leader, you can work on him, work with him, understanding that he's probably going to be a liberal Democrat, and he's going to have policies that reflect the liberal Democrats. So if you're a world leader in Britain, France, England, whatever, or sorry, Britain, France, Germany, you're operating with him on that level, understanding that's who he is, and that's all you need to get through. It's not like, I think there's a certain level of charisma that I think, like one of the things I will say for like Trump is that his charisma level is one of the things that I think allowed him to extend a relationship with North Korea that I don't think another president, regardless of political party, could have done unless he initially took that initiative himself. And so I think that as a world leader, it is kind of, you're like, you placate him, you understand that like we owe these guys run the world economy effectively, and like, yeah, he's 81 years old, but you kind of have to placate him because that's what's going on. I guess
what I mean is like, you don't think that they look at that and think that we look weak because we're doing that? Like, you don't think that reflects poorly on the country, that's what the most stressful, the most powerful man in the world that we're putting up looks like that?
I think they don't care. I think as long as they're able to get the trade deals and the NATO deals that they want, I don't think they really care who like, there's a certain degree, I don't think they really care
because you think
who the man actually
they're
in charge.
Probably acknowledging the same thing that we are, that they may be dealing with him face to face, but in reality, it's the people underneath him that are like doing the legwork. I think that's probably a fair take. And I think it could go either way, but I think that's a very fair take. It just depends on who the world leader is. Someone like Vladimir Putin is probably sitting back like, the fucking Americans are weak as fuck, whatever. But a more reasonable person, someone in the EU is probably like, fuck them. It doesn't matter. This doesn't matter because we've been having these trade deals, these political deals for fucking decades now. So we know that who the president is doesn't matter as long as they're not trying to tank our shit. That's probably why we're so concerned about Donald Trump, is because it's like, no, fuck NATO. Like, we're just gonna not pay them anymore.
Yeah,
this is how it's gonna be, and so that's why they cared. Okay, that makes sense.
You get Biden, doesn't matter. He's 81 years old. He's gonna fund NATO. It's like, okay,
right. No, I think that's
or like the what's the thing I'm thinking of, the Paris Peace Accords or climate accords. Like, you just know that those are things that he's just like, that is how they operated. Obama did that. Biden's just going to go into the same thing.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that's a very reasonable take. These are the things that are lost when we don't discuss them. We're just like, he's a piece of shit. Everyone hates us because we're putting him as president. It's like, well, let's talk about it for 10 minutes. Like, it doesn't, 5 minutes. It doesn't
Yeah.
take much for us to be like, well, that's actually a fucking reasonable take, you know? No, I think that's super duper fair. I like that a lot. So let's see here. I have some questions here at the bottom. They're starting. So let's talk about the economy a little bit, right? That was like a big, it's been a big topic lately. It was a big topic in the debate. And there was a lot of different ideas thrown around, specifically about Joe Biden, right? There was like a lot of, this is one thing I found super interesting, was all of the attacks on like what Donald Trump did to the country and how we're in a bad position because of him. But he's not been president for almost 4 years now. So how much can we really chalk up to Donald Trump when, like, we've had 4 years of a different administration who've had different spending policies, they've affected inflation, they've had different foreign policy, like all of this stuff has gone on. How much can can Joe Biden really try and throw at Donald Trump for the state of the economy? You know, I like struggle to make those connections.
Yeah, this is one of the interesting places where, because both presidents are effectively incumbents, you can have one guy blaming the other, which we wouldn't have really had. Like if you had, 2008, you have McCain and Obama going after like the Bush economic, and they're both trying. McCain's trying to distance himself from it, and Obama's trying to say, "Oh, McCain's doing the same thing." Versus like if you had Bush up there trying to defend, his legacy, it's just different. And so, I think the economy thing is really interesting because did you like hear about the UK election that happened today, or sorry, yesterday?
No, they're elected new prime
So,
minister.
so yeah, so the UK has had the Conservative Party in power for about 15, 14 years now.
Yeah.
And just yesterday, they had a huge, huge backlash against the Conservative Party, and now the Labour Party has taken over. And just like here, almost more so because they're more affected by the energy crisis because of the whole
Yes.
Ukraine-Russia thing, they're voting against inflation. And because Labour Party was the one in power, they were backlashing against the Conservative Party, and thus they lost hundreds of seats. And I feel like kind of what's happening right now is the same thing. It's the inflation is the number one thing. I think everyone would kind of argue
Yeah.
that housing may be second when it comes to the economy, but inflation is the number one thing. I don't think it matters what Bush did, what Biden did, or what Trump did. The reality is that the moves we took during COVID, during both of those presidents, meant that the bill was going to be due at some point.
Yeah.
And we've been paying it. And it doesn't, like, if Trump was president, we'd have the exact same inflation issues that are happening now. And it doesn't be Biden's president, so he's suffering those same things. And you can debate whether what we did during COVID was good or bad with the amount of spending that we did.
Yeah.
But the reality is that bill was due. Combine that with the crisis in Ukraine and the shipping crises that happened during COVID, that was going to bring about inflation. And so,
so I think these are all really fair points to discuss, right? So the first one being the COVID spending, right? I think that there's room to debate, and we would have. I couldn't go into a full debate now because I'd have to have the numbers and the timelines in front of me.
Yeah, same.
But I think there's definitely a question as to whether or not the level of continued COVID spending that happened during Biden was necessary. You know, there was a lot of, especially amongst the public, because the government had taken their stance and they held on to that even until now, that they're like, we're going to fight COVID until it's gone. You know, the public perception had very much shifted. People were not taking the vaccine anymore. They were still pushing that. People were wanting to go back to work. States were opening back up, and we're still spending billions of dollars in like COVID spending, you know? So I think there's a big, and again, I don't want to fully debate it because I don't have all the numbers there, but I think there's a decent question about whether or not the level of that was necessary, and that definitely played a role in inflation. As far as the war in Ukraine, there's also a huge debate on whether or not we would be in that position if Donald Trump was in office.
Trump was still in office.
Because that's one of the questions I was going to ask you is later on, but I'll ask you now because we're talking about it. Like, obviously you're not a foreign policy expert. This is all opinion. That goes without saying. But do you think that Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine if Donald Trump wins in 2020?
I think this is kind of going back to what I was talking to you about world leaders. You, as Vladimir Putin, you know how a liberal Democratic Joe Biden is going to operate in international affairs. And so I don't know if he would have invaded if Trump was in office. I don't know that for sure. But I do know that he knows that if I do it during Biden, he is predictable. I have an understanding of how he is going to work based on his political schism. And so I think this is a worthwhile move. Where I think Trump's unpredictability means
Yes.
that this move, I don't know if maybe he would drop troops, you know? He doesn't know,
Right.
like I'm not saying he would,
Who
but like
knows what he's gonna do?
he knows how a Biden would operate versus how a Trump would operate would mean that I maybe I don't do this. And
Yeah.
so I think Trump always like chalks it up to like his bravado and whatnot, but I think that there's that always that you don't know what card he's gonna pull. And I think that's kind of
Yes.
a foreign affairs benefit, maybe con, but
There's a
whatever.
video.
I don't know.
I kind of think that I sent it to you this week. That was two black Republican representatives on some random podcast that I never heard of before, and they were talking about when Donald Trump was meeting with the Taliban leaders. Did I send you this video? If I didn't, I will send it
Maybe.
to you because it's fucking awesome, right? I only recognize one of them. His name is Donald something. He's from Florida, and he's the only representative that I recognize. But the other guy I did not recognize. I just know that he's a representative. So they're talking about they're in a meeting with Donald Trump, and he's meeting with Taliban leaders, right? And Donald Trump is meeting with
Yeah.
Taliban, and he's talking about when they're going to withdraw from Afghanistan. And Donald Trump is saying to his interpreters, like, I want you to tell them that if they take one American life, I will kill them. And the interpreter like looked at them and he's like I'm not sure. And Donald Trump's like, no, tell him, like that's what I want you to say. And so he said it to the Taliban, and he like sat back. And before Donald Trump left the room, he took a picture out of his pocket that was a satellite photo of the Taliban leader's house, and like set it on the table and then walked out of the room. And so we're talking about this. I don't have any reason to believe that these guys are lying. Not only because Donald Trump is so unpredictable, but because I don't have any reason to believe that they are lying, right? And when I'm thinking about that, I'm like, it seems believable to me because it seems like something Donald Trump would tell his advisors, I'm going to do this. And they would say, that's a horrific idea. You really shouldn't do that. And he says, no, I'm going to fucking do it anyway. And he just does what he wants. Like, I very much can see that happening just in the hallway outside of the room, that he's like, so this is my fucking plan. And they're like, dear God, please don't do that. He's like, just watch. This is what I'm going to do. And he does it. That just seems very within the realm of possibility to me. Okay, as you guys can see here, a little bit of change of outfit. I went to do the rest of this video last night and it was 99 degrees in Washington State, so I got too warm, I got overwhelmed, and I couldn't do this anymore. So I had to take a break, come back to this tomorrow. So what we have here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at this debate, go over some of these timestamps that I have here. We're going to look at some of the digital materials. I pulled up some other little video clips and some articles and some other things that we're going to take a look at so that we can kind of compare and contrast and give ourselves some more context as we work through this debate. So I think that we will just go ahead and we'll let this play for a second, and then we will jump to our first timestamp because it is just their walkout. So we'll just go ahead and let this go.
We're live from Georgia, a key battleground state in the race for the White House. In just moments, the current U.S. president will debate the former U.S. president as their party's presumptive nominees, a first in American history. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world to our studios in Atlanta. This is the CNN presidential debate.
This debate is being produced by CNN and is coming to you live on CNN.
Let's go to our first timestamp.
With campaign staff are not permitted during the debate. By accepting our invitation to debate, both candidates and their campaigns agreed to accept these rules.
Now, please welcome the 40.
All right, so here we go. Here's the walkouts. Let's just take a look at them. Let's see how they look when they present themselves.
46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Have a little smile on. Walk in, stiff. The no applause is weird. It makes both of the entrances look odd because there's no applause. That's super strange. You can hear he's quiet already.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
He looks a little slumped over too. Not super high energy. Probably told him to be chill. Right, the walkout. We're just gonna let this one roll.
Gentlemen,
because
thanks so much.
We have our first clip in 16 seconds. They're gonna ask about inflation and groceries, and then we'll take another look.
The economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical
$100 and $120. Those are the numbers that Jake Tapper just gave. So before we even go any further than this, right, because I think that number sounds a little bit weird to all of us, let's take a deeper look and get a little bit more information about this. Okay, This is a video that has been making the rounds lately that I think will give us a little bit more context as to the inflation that we're feeling, because there's just been this message, this line coming out of the Biden admin for so long that things are actually pretty good. Jobs are getting better, wages are going up, things aren't actually as bad as people say they are. There's a lot of complaining, a lot of talk about, how bad people's wages are and how much they can't afford things, but this isn't really true. The CPI and the Consumer Price Index, right, those are the same things. When we talked about this, when they're giving you, with the Biden admin, when the government is giving you inflation numbers, they're looking at the Consumer Price Index, which looks at all of the things that you spend money on throughout the year. What they do is they take these numbers and they compare them against what you spent on them last year, and that's what gives you your generalized inflation numbers. The problem that we have here is the way the government chooses to look at the numbers, and they remove the biggest factors. They remove your rent, your food, the things that you pay the most money for. So that's how they can work these statistics to make it look like inflation isn't as bad when it comes to you, but that's because they're removing and ignoring all the things that you actually spend all of your money on, right? So let's take a closer look, because we saw those numbers. Jake Tapper said $100 of groceries last year cost $120 now. So let's take a look at this and see if that seems to ring true, because I think many of you guys have seen this video.
I feel like I'm gonna be sick. I just looked through my Walmart history and I found this Walmart order from 2 years ago for the whole month worth of groceries.
2 years ago.
45 items cost $126.
So what he's saying is he's going to reorder a grocery order from 2 years ago, right? 45 items, $126. That's what he's saying.
A whole month of groceries just for me, basically. But I did notice this reorder all button, and I wanted to see how much it would cost now. Now, this order of 45 items for 1 month would have cost $414.
$414. Okay, this is really the inflation that we're talking about, right? The reason that this matters is because even in the debate, even when they're presenting to you the problems that supposedly the president, the government is going to address, they're lying to you. Even the information being presented to you, they're lying to you. It's not $100 and $120, it's $120 and $412. $140 and $412. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about more than twice what you spent 2 years ago than what you're spending right now. That's what we're talking about. This whole line about 100, 120, this dog shit. To begin with, the idea of what they're working with inflation is dog shit. It's a lie. They're lying to you. Go ahead and let them speak for a moment, and we'll see what they have to say about these inflation numbers.
Home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president, what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free.
Don't worry about what's happening right now. Let's talk about what happened 4 years ago when I fucking took office, right? Not what you're experiencing now, but 4 years ago.
Fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right.
He's gonna keep doing this lying thing. This is what I was talking about with Josh. This type of lying doesn't ingratiate you. It doesn't help you win anybody over that you're trying to win, which tells me that they just don't care. They just don't give a fuck, which is not a surprise to any of us. We know the government doesn't care about you. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they don't care even about the margins. They're just trying to hammer home this base, and it almost seems like they're just kind of throwing caution to the wind and well, we'll figure it out on the back end, whatever we need to do to fucking make these numbers work, which just... However you feel about the 2020 election, I don't think that there's going to be the same level of sketchiness surrounding it, because I think there are too many eyes on it. So I just don't know really what the strategy is from the Biden administration here, other than let's just make Donald Trump look like shit, even though he's 4 years removed. Nothing happening now has anything to do with him. Let's just keep piling on a guy who's not fucking president anymore and ignore everything that I did as Joe Biden to make any of this worse.
The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible.
No jobs when it was during COVID and no one could go to work.
Put things back together again, and that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought on a position where we have 800,000.
Talked about this. Government doesn't create new jobs, and Donald Trump is going to call Joe Biden out for this eventually. That when he took office, all these people had lost jobs because they were from COVID, right? They weren't allowed to work. They were told they had to stay home. They were laid off. They're all this type of shit. So for years and years, jobs are being gained, quote unquote, in the country, but there's people getting their jobs back who didn't have jobs before, who had jobs before, who lost them and are now getting them back. That's not a new job. That's somebody who used to be employed, who wasn't, and now is employed again. That's not a new job.
new manufacturing jobs, but there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of housing, the price of a whole range of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. And we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over.
They're not doing any of this shit. This don't fucking matter. After this, Donald Trump talks about how great the economy was. After him, that it was the best. And this is going to be Joe Biden's response.
It actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, a bounce-back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he had the greatest economy in the world. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that...
Yeah, the record-setting numbers don't matter.
We find ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's...
This deficit thing is a real... They're going to kind of go back and forth about this, and I talked to Josh about this when I recorded with him. I don't know whether or not this will make it into the actual video because I don't know for sure what I lost. But we talked about this kind of back and forth thing with the COVID money is like a little bit like a red herring, you know, that they're going to throw this back and forth at each other. But the debate is going to go on probably for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 fucking years about how the pandemic was handled, whether Donald Trump needed to spend this much money, whether Joe Biden needed to spend this much money, whether we could have adjusted it, the waste, the fraud, the abuse, the blah, 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 blah. These things are going to be debated until the end of time, right? The reality is both of these people added billions of dollars to the deficit, trillions of dollars to the deficit. This doesn't matter. Like this back and forth thing they're doing is just, it's a mudslinging bullshit thing to try and distract you from the reality that neither of them care about the deficit. Neither of them care about the amount of spending that goes in because they're going to be dead within 10 years. So whatever we do with our government doesn't actually matter to them. Nothing changes for them. They're in for a win right now. Me, you, anybody watching this who's under the age of fucking 80, right? You have interest in what happens after these next 4 years. These people don't. These two men only care about what happens in the next 4 years because after this, regardless, neither of them can run again. They can't be president again after this. They only care about 4 years. They're only talking to you about 4 years. If you're 30 years old like I am, I'm 29. I'm not even halfway through my life. I have way more life to be worried about after these 4 years than I do in the next 4 years. This almost doesn't matter. In comparison to everything else, this almost doesn't matter at all. And yet here we are. I think there's another claim in here, so let's hear what else Joe Biden has to say.
I lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant in the military. You know, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world.
Okay, all right. So this one caught me. Even when I was originally watching it, and I'm watching it with my kids in the background, I'm the only one really able to pay attention to the TV, I caught this, right? This is a lie. I don't know if he believes this to be true, if he doesn't remember what happened, or if he's just boldly lying about something. Regardless, it's not true, right? At the very least, there's been some conversation about some people in Jordan, stuff like that, that I don't really know that much about, that's more involved with the Israeli conflict, with the Israeli war, but at the very least, 13 people were killed when my ex-classmate was there in Afghanistan at Abbey Gate and there was a terrorist explosion there. When there was a terrorist attack and 13 people died. She was there. I know someone who was there. You're a liar. You don't care about the military. All of this is going to be a show about how much these people don't care about anything. But this whole act that Biden does about, oh, my son is in the military and he got cancer and the burn pits and the blah, blah, blah and all this shit. This is actually what he thinks about the military. This is really what he thinks, right? When these soldiers came home and they're being brought off the ships, they're being brought off the planes, their bodies are being brought off the planes, and Joe Biden's checking his fucking watch. Right? Because this is happening. He's checking his watch. We have 13 soldiers who come in who are just blown the fuck up in this horrific shit show of a pullout in Afghanistan, and Joe Biden can't just nothing but check his watch. It's always got time to do. God damn, this is taking a long time. What the fuck's taking so long? I don't know. 13 people that you got killed are now being brought home. But fucking, that doesn't matter, right? We don't need to worry about that because he's the only president to never have fucking lost anybody, right? So that's nice. Okay, so here we have the two gentlemen talking about tax cuts, the Donald Trump tax cuts, and kind of why they went into place. There's a lot of back and forth about this. I can only speak from my personal experience. I know that there was the same deal with the COVID money, a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in these tax cuts, that if you have a bad company and you're not doing anything to try and ensure that they're spending their money wisely or in a way that's going to benefit their workers, then you're going to have stock buybacks. You're going to have a bunch of this just dumping of funds back into bonuses and all this type of shit that we don't want to see, right? If you have a good company, I know from conversations with my boss, with our employees, we benefited directly because of the Donald Trump tax cuts. When our company made more money, we made more money. We got bigger bonuses. All of these things happened during the Donald Trump tax cuts. So that's my experience. I know that isn't for everybody, right? But this whole line that they're feeding you about these are just tax cuts for the billionaires and this doesn't help you, that's not true, right? Because they didn't all of a sudden raise taxes on you. They didn't raise your taxes while cutting them on the billionaires. That isn't what happened. They cut taxes across the board. This is the reality of the Donald Trump tax cuts. What they choose to ignore during this whole conversation is, well, they're cutting taxes and we need to raise taxes on the billionaires so that we can save Social Security and so that we can do this and the deficit and all this type of shit. The solution is not to tax more people. It's not to steal more money. That is not the solution here. The solution is to cut your fucking budget, to remove the waste, the fraud, the abuse. We've talked about 5 times already, right? That's the answer here. The answer is not to steal more money from constituents, to take more hard-earned money. We talk about debate all day, hard-earned billionaires, blah, blah, blah. That's their money. That's their property. You're now incentivizing and you're advocating for the government to steal people's property from them. I don't think this is right. You're not in the morally correct stance for making this argument. You're wrong here because you're advocating for theft on the part of the government. This is wrong. For people to have their items stolen from them is wrong. Whether it's another person or government or an entity, it doesn't matter. This is wrong. This is what you're advocating for. This is what these people are advocating. This is what Joe Biden is advocating for and he'll talk about the Social Security is, we need to tax the billionaires X% and that's how we're going to save Social Security. A thing they're never ever going to touch because they have billions of dollars. We need to steal money from them so that everybody else can have shit. Listen, in all likelihood, I will... If it were to exist when I reach that age, I will draw from Social Security. It's not going to be. It's going to be solved by the time it's going to be completely dead. But this benefits me. I'm still telling you, you should be stealing from people to give me money. That doesn't make any sense. This is backwards. It's wrong. This is immoral, what you're advocating for. I'm not in favor of this, but this is what they're talking about.
Tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes?
Because the solution is not to steal more money. We spend too much money. There's too much money going out the door. It's not about the collection. It's not, there's 330 million people in this country. We can definitely collect enough money. If that's what we're doing, if stealing money is what we're doing, you can definitely get enough to run the government off of 330 million people, plus your trade, your tariffs, all this extra shit, right? More theft is not the answer. Cut the fucking budget.
Than they do now.
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. but he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is...
I don't know whether or not that's true. The actual death numbers by president, I have no idea. It doesn't really matter to me. It is, in my opinion, the reality that when Joe Biden took office, we were on our way out of COVID, right? That's 2020. We're figuring things out. The vaccines are out by now. Like, all of this is happening, right? You just got to fucking sail your way out of it. There was an immense amount of spending that went on. There was an immense amount of regulation that went on, trying to force people to take vaccines, to try and take people's jobs away. None of this needed to happen. None of this needed to happen. This hampered the economy. It hampered our view from the world. This was a bad thing, in my view. Let's go ahead and we're going to skip forward. We're going to find, this is kind of the first moment that we're seeing some slip-ups by President Biden here. All right, here we go.
Making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
Oof. And I'm not going to sit here and like hammer on him, be like, oh, this is fucking horrible. I can't believe that we're seeing things like this. I know this is the reality to me. Like, this is precisely what I expected. I think we'll talk a little bit at the end because I didn't really get to it in the previous video. I smashed all together. The cope that happened at the end of this was absolutely delicious. I mean, to have to watch all of the various different Democratic media outlets reckon with the reality of what was happening was kind of awesome. And I don't know if it was like them finally accepting reality or them having to just do it publicly or like what the deal was. You know, I have a difficult time believing that anybody was able to honestly overlook what was happening with Joe Biden as far as the age, the slip-ups, the falling, the gaffes, the inability to communicate. I mean, there's allegations of like potty accidents. I don't know. I'm not trying to just take shots at him. I'm trying to have a realistic discussion about what this looks like and what it means for the country. It doesn't look good. So to have to watch them, the commentators, the politicians reckon with this and kind of deal with it and now talk about, we don't really know if he can go with this moving forward and who we're maybe going to replace him with. And then the media talks about Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama. I mean, all of these conspiracy theories that start to come out about it. With Joe Biden steps down right now, then Kamala Harris can take the place, and then she can decide if she's going to run or if she's just going to run the country. And then if she doesn't want to run for the president, then she can take a step back, and then somebody else who fits in the BIPOC lane can then step in, and we can have Michelle Obama as president. I don't know, dude. It's difficult. There's a part of me that says, like, this is not House of Cards. We're not talking about Frank Underwood and all these people. Like, this is the real world, right, where these things happen. At the same time, this is a real world, and politics is a fucking weird place. And there's something deep inside of me that was wrong. There's something in my gut that tells me there is some seriously sketchy shit that is going to try and take place before November. There is still opportunity. The convention is still coming up, and so there's still discussions about an open convention, if they're just going to take votes, and I mean that could get really hairy. Josh Keaton talked about that. I don't know if you guys are going to see it, but he mentioned the last time they had an open convention, the Democrats, was 1968. After that, they didn't have a Republican president for like 20, 30 years after that, other than Jimmy Carter, right? Which was not a good look for the Democrats. So I don't know, man. It's a difficult game to play, and it's a proper coin toss if you're going to try and run this guy. I didn't think he was going to make it these 4 years. I definitely don't think he makes the next 4. But I don't know. There's now conversations about Parkinson's disease, and I don't know. I don't know if these are just things that are coming about so they have a reason to pull him, or if this is the reality and they're trying to get him pulled. But there's nothing about Joe Biden's demeanor and his ego that says to me that he's going to step down willingly. It says to me that he's going to need to be pulled from this race. And I just don't know how likely that is. So I guess we'll see. I've always said from the very beginning that if they just, RFK could win. And I believe that still now, that RFK could win. And if the Democrats had not completely slandered him up until this point, they could pull him and let him be the DNC nomination, and they would win. That's the polling that I have seen indicates that RFK beats Donald Trump, that he beats Joe Biden, that he pulls from both of them if he's allowed on the ballot. My understanding with this debate, the only reason he wasn't there is because the DNC and the various Democratic Party apparatchiks kind of conspired to not file his paperwork in time, so he wasn't certified for the debate. Other than that, he had filed everything. He had done his part, but they didn't certify his paperwork to allow him to be on the debate stage. I think that they're scared. I think that was obvious from the beginning, but now they fucked themselves over so bad. You know, I heard RFK say that he's willing to be the DNC nominee, but I don't know, dude. I think that's a real interesting situation, and I, from a standard politics perspective, am beyond excited to see how the fuck they figure this out, because it is just such a sketchy scenario. We're going to talk now about some abortion stuff, some different, what I wrote here is abortion contradictions, and so we'll kind of get into this. This is a hot topic and discussed many times throughout this debate, and it seems as though it's going to continue to be a hot topic. I know there's a lot of predictions about how big this is going to be in 2024, and Donald Trump kind of addresses this a little bit, so I think we'll look into this and then we'll talk about it more.
Even the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important.
It's also worth noting that no one really knows totally how Donald Trump feels about any of this, because there's been kind of a wishy-washy nature, and he's just kind of supporting pro-life in general, and I don't really care. To me, it doesn't matter. You know, this to me strikes like he's from New York. He's probably generally pro-choice and just can't say that. So he's just going to take a generally pro-life stance, and however people need to use that, or however he needs to use that to his advantage, he's going to do that. That's just my thinking. He was the first pro-gay president, so I have every reason to believe that he's probably pro-choice on the back end with the affairs that he's having. Like, he probably does believe in a woman's right to choose, but as the Republican nominee, can't admit that openly. So
some people don't. Follow your heart, but you have to get elected also, and because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical, because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill.
We talked about this with Josh Keaton. We addressed this specific comment, and Josh Keaton is like, yeah, that's like really bad wording. And I'm not trying to shit on Josh Keaton. He's saying what he believes. He's like, this is bad wording. Like, Ralph Northam should never have said that. You know, I think it's happening. And, you know, they're talking about like later abortions. They're like, whoa, that's not what he said. What he said is he's talking about Ralph Northam said that they were going to take a baby that was already born, and they're going to decide when they're not going to kill it. Josh Keaton is like, yeah, but I mean, when's this really happening? Not the point, right? Not the fucking point. If our point with pro-life bills is that, you know, 6 weeks is too early, and, you know, how often are people really doing this? And, you know, I like the same thing applies on the other side. It doesn't matter how often it's happening. There shouldn't be any opportunity for anybody to kill a baby that's already born. There shouldn't be a law that opens the door for you to potentially commit fucking infanticide after you've decided you don't want a baby but you've carried it for 9 months. This is a separate conversation beside from you know, the health of the mother at 8.5 months, and they're both going to die if we don't just take the baby. That's a wholly different discussion. There's nothing when the baby is already born that is going to cause it to kill the mother. It's not going to happen. There's no reality where that's the truth. So it's weird the way that they're handling this thing, that like we definitely shouldn't have any bills that limits it to 6 weeks, but it's okay if we don't have any caps on it at all. Wrong. Completely false. I did discuss with Josh Keaton, I think there's a huge social aspect to this, that if we could kind of cohesively as a country decide what our line was, and I think 15 weeks for most people like feels pretty right. If we could kind of cohesively decide as a country by openly having these discussions, we probably wouldn't need as many laws in the books to set that line, because the outside outlier cases would be what they are, and the emergencies are the emergencies, and those things already happen or continue to happen, right? But if we acknowledge that those are the only extremes that need to exist, I kind of believe that everything else will get washed out if you and all of your friends are under the general understanding that in America, we don't fuck with anything over 15 weeks. That's wrong. Morally wrong across the board in the country. And if you think your friends are going to judge you because that's the morally understood line, we're less likely to see more of these late-term abortions if we just, this is what we accept. But there's so much backhandedness and dishonesty and like nastiness around the conversation of abortion that it's impossible for anybody to even be open about it and try and have a good discussion. You know, when I was talking to Josh, like, I'm almost like extremely pro-life, but for not religious reasons. That's a baby. That's a baby. I'm unconvinced that it's not a baby. If we would, Colin is the one that put it to me this way originally, that if we discovered single-celled life on a different planet, we would acknowledge that as life. But for some reason, there's a debate on whether or not it's life when it's inside of a human woman. I think that argument to me makes sense, and that's not, you know, me driving home that like, okay, now you have all these rights on stuff, but to argue that that's not a life, I think is a disingenuous argument. If we would acknowledge that it is on another planet in any other setting other than a woman's womb, then we have to be consistent and logical with the way that we're looking at this now. So that's just my take on it. But I think that this abortion thing is gonna be very interesting, and a lot of it will depend on how many more laws we see in the 2024 election, kind of by state, how many more of these things are going to be figured out. So I'm very interested in this. There's still a lot of hot debate around it. So there's going to be a lot more. And Joe Biden says something really interesting here. We're going to let it go for just a minute because he says something about there are bigger concerns than just abortions that would need to be taking place.
Kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they were all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to rescue them across state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many.
It's just a weird. What do you mean? Is that a rampant problem that we have in this country? That's a bigger concern than abortion? You're more concerned about incest than you are about abortion. A late term or preterm abortion, that's what you really. It's fucking weird. Okay, and Joe Biden did say something, they talked about immigration briefly, and Joe Biden said something about how the immigration numbers are down, the border crossings are down 40% than when Donald Trump was in office, and it's just another one of these like lines of bullshit. I don't know where you're even coming up with these numbers, but that's the only point of that timestamp was just to point out his lie that he's down 40%. We all know that that's not true. We're literally record-setting numbers right now. We're literally setting record numbers right now for border crossings, illegally, interactions, stop and frisk, all of this stuff. So I don't know where they could have got that line, but it's not true at all. We're going to talk now about Putin's desires, right? I think this confuses me. There's just this we'll talk about it. Let's listen to them talk, and then we'll go right afterwards.
Zelensky, as president-elect, before I take office on January 20th, I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet.
Every U.S. president is a war criminal. Every single one of them, including these two motherfuckers on stage. Just to put that out there.
Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's
okay. Let's start there because that's objectively false. Okay, we have here from Statista.com, right? They're collecting all this information. This is the numbers, total bilateral aid allocations to Ukraine between January 24th, 2022 and February 29th, 2024, by donor and type, in billions, in euros. Okay, United States, right here, 67.8, EU institutions, 29.97. What the fuck are we talking about here? And it's no military aid, it's all humanitarian financial. That's because all the military aid is coming from us. Right? That's what he's talking about. Oh, all the money that we're getting was tax money. We're just giving them weapons. We're just giving them weapons, right? We're just giving them fucking missiles and guns and shit that they're killing other people with. It's no big deal. Not a fucking problem, right? Plus, we're enriching ourselves, we're dumping our own money in our own fucking pockets. There's no problem with that. But there's definitely no interesting or sketchy fucking inflationary or economic outcomes or circumstances or consequences if we're putting our own money into our fucking pockets, right? That's definitely never going to blow up in our fucking faces. That's not the worst way to sustain a nation is by fucking military combat, right? No. Never. That's not proven time and time and time again. Of course not. That would be ridiculous, right? Don't pay attention to what's happening over here. Pay attention to the guy that we're telling you is a dictator. That even though he's never said this, there's no any indication of that other than what we're telling you. You need to believe that if we don't stop him now, he's going to take every fucking country in Europe. He's taking fucking everything. Start with Poland, bitch. Why? For what? Is there Russians there? No, but there are in Ukraine. Right? In the eastern part, in the Donbass that they're fighting over? Right. Right. This is a lie. They're setting up, they're just continuing to lay the narrative for this 10-year commitment they just made to Ukraine. Right? They're not going anywhere. We are not going anywhere. We're going to keep taking money. We're going to keep making money. We're going to keep giving weapons. You guys need to get used to it. That's all that this is. This is just a huge line of bullshit so that you can feel more comfortable with the reality of what's going on there so that in 5 years when me and all my fucking friends are sent to the Eastern Front so that we can fight Russians, get blown up by fucking drones, it's going to be great, right? It's no big deal. You'll just know that at least we made some fucking coin on the way there. Well, not you, but they did. So that's nice. At least there's that. So this was a lie as far as the money allocated. That's all more than double, just over double that we've given as opposed to the EU institutions. I mean, I guess if you want to fuck all these together into one group, but I don't know why we would. We don't live over there, right? We're separated by, I don't know, a fucking ocean, right? But it's relevant. It's important that we're not going to handle any other place. We don't need to be policing the rest of the world. But goddamn it if we don't police Ukraine, right? Goddamn if we don't police Ukraine. Okay, we'll watch this for just another second because they're going to talk about Israel as well. A little bit of bin Laden action.
That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel.
Is it bad that when they say Middle East, I still think Afghanistan? Like that's still the first thing that comes to mind. It's just from the age, brother.
Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council, straight through the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Well, there's just 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept.
That's not true. Netanyahu wants the war to keep going. We want the war to keep going. We don't as people, but the government does for sure. It's the same thing in Ukraine. We're fucking making money hand over fist. We're just piling money over there. It's only going to benefit us in the end. That's as the government.
Meantime,
as a nation, we're fucked.
What's happened in Israel? We're finding the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No, one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so that's there are two different things.
Than anybody in the world.
Hamas cannot allow.
Tell that to the fucking protests, you dumb bitch. And what does that even mean? The biggest producer for support of Israel, we make the most shit that gets sent over there. Again, we don't fucking live over there. We have nothing to do with anything that's going on over there. Do you think we're going to solve this issue? You think the West is going to fix Israel? You think we're going to decide where that fucking line splits? Who gets to live where? No. There's no world in which we solve that fucking problem. But we're the #1 producer of support of Israel in the fucking world, right?
Allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have...
Get him like we did bin Laden. It just fucking took, 10 years. It wasn't no big deal. Get him like we got bin Laden. It worked swimmingly.
To do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas.
By that, do you mean let him go first and then go and get him 10 years later? Is that what you mean?
Greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine.
Fuck this guy. Okay, we're going to take a look now at something that Joe Biden said when he rehashed these comments in Charleston, right? The very fine people thing. We're going to take a look at what he said, and then we're going to take a look at the actual clip that I pulled, and then we'll kind of go from there.
You got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you hear any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Do you ever hear any president say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run in the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said, "What do you think of those people? The ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones," he said, "I think they're fine people on both sides." What American president would ever say, Nazis coming out of field?
Okay, so we talked about this. Josh Keaton, like, why are they doing this? Why are you lying about something that doesn't benefit? It's so easy to corroborate as false that I just don't understand it. So I think there's a ton of people who haven't seen the clip, so we're gonna watch it. I pulled it up. I don't know exactly where we should start and stop. I'm gonna go back like 45 seconds before, and then we'll let it play through, and then we'll go. Okay, we're just gonna start here, right? And we're just gonna go. We're going to let it play, and they'll do the very fine people thing, and then we'll end it.
We're spending a lot of money on the inner cities. We're fixing the inner cities. We're doing far more than anybody's done with respect to the inner cities. It's a priority for me. And it's
this guy to Trump's right, to our left, is Steve Mnuchin, right? If you guys don't know, next time you watch a fucking Disney movie, if it was made before 2016, that guy's name is one of the producers. I swear to God. Swear to God. Worked at Disney before he did this. Weirdest shit you ever seen. It's just one of those things.
It's very important.
Mr. President, are you putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane?
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
It's on both sides, sir. You said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame, yes. I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Neo-Nazis started this. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as neo-Nazis. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. No, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, excuse me, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group.
Okay, I think that that's enough, but I think that this, like, well, that was 2.5 minutes, right, that we played roughly of this clip, and that's the full context of what he said. Is it a perfect statement? No. Just like I agree with Josh Keaton. You could have just ended it. Political violence is wrong. Violence is wrong. Anybody beating anybody else's ass is condemned. I don't like this shit, especially the Nazis. Fuck the Nazis. I don't like that shit, right? Easy to say. Very, very easy to say. That's not who Donald Trump is, right? That's not who Donald Trump is. And just because it isn't exactly what he said doesn't mean that he said the opposite. So I just don't get this lying thing that happens, this deception that goes on with what's... We can have a discussion about why he said this, what he could have said, was this the best thing? Because then we would all agree, no, probably not. There's a million other things he could have said that would have been better than this. But this is the reality of what he said. This is the honest truth, and we should have a fucking discussion about it, not lie about it. Now here, when we come back from the break, Joe Biden is asked to respond to the black voters that don't approve of the way that he's conducting himself. And this starts kind of a very interesting dialogue back and forth about blacks and the way people are being voted and stuff like that. I think it's just very, very interesting.
Welcome back to the CNN presidential debate live from Georgia. Let's talk about persistent challenges you both faced in your first terms and you'd certainly face again in a second term. President Biden, while black unemployment dropped to a record low under your presidency, black families still earned far less than white families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, and black Americans are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white Americans. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one.
This, before he continues, is very similar to Donald Trump's January 6th comments. We didn't play those other because the Jan 6th thing, I want to have a bigger discussion about it that isn't here. We've talked about it enough on this show that I think you guys know where I'm at with it. But when Donald Trump gets asked about January 6th, what do you say to voters who are concerned that you're going to like rehash his behavior? And on January 6th, we were kicking ass. On January 6th, we're doing this, we're doing all this like good stuff. It's a very similar thing to what Joe Biden does here.
The fact of the matter is there's more small black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're trying to provide housing for black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses.
Everybody, not just blacks.
In addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that black families have to make relative to child care.
It's almost like it's like the information is in there, but it's lost. Like the lines are in there. He's just really can't fucking find them.
Incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce black child care costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for child care costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those child care protections,
only for the blacks though. This race-based shit is done. It's over. You can't keep doing things like this. We all acknowledge the economic disparities, the differences, all of us. But we're tired of being beaten over the fucking head with it, because at this point, this has nothing to do with me. I'm not putting the fucking black man down. I'm not holding you down. I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to, I want to own a house too. I want to have a fucking reasonable, decent life where I can give my kids something, right? Because we all also acknowledge owning a home is how you access wealth. That's how you move up to the next bracket in your life is you own a home. You can access different amounts of money. You can, if an emergency happens, there's different things you can leverage. Your life changes when you have that amount of money just to leverage to try and do things, right? That goes for all of us. This wash, they're going to talk about, I'm trying to get in a $10,000 first-time black home buyer tax credit. Okay, they got rid of that before I bought my house. So shouldn't we be doing that across the board if we're acknowledging the house prices up, what they said, 30%? Fuck everybody else though. Right? Let's talk about 13% of the country who's going to try and buy a house. Not all the rest of the people who are also getting fucked over by BlackRock, by all these companies who are buying up the residential real estate because the government's allowing them and then renting it to us so we can't ever own it. Right? But instead, let's focus on race-based politics so that we can single out individual parties and continue to drive a fucking wedge between the different races in the country and make things worse. Right? That's what you're talking about here. That's the reality of what's going on here. You're not helping anybody. You're fucking people over. You're fucking over the entire country by trying to put different races forward. History aside, you're fucking people over. You're making things worse by doing this.
Growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any black family first-time home buyer should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home.
But only
so
if you're
they
black,
can
though.
get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those black families and those black individuals who provided had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, doctor, and anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest is forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right, it's been very bad. He caused the inflation, and it's killing black families and Hispanic families and just about everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled and tripled and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New scam and all this money that's being thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now, and it could be 18, it could be 19, and even...
So, the black jobs thing, right? I asked Josh Keaton about this, and Josh Keaton, it's like, I'm not offended by it, it is what it is, but like, I asked him, what does this mean to you? Like, what do you think that he's talking about? And Josh Keaton says, I think that he's speaking to traditionally blue-collar jobs, that he's kind of putting black people in this spot so that he can pin them in, like, you guys are working poor jobs, and now they're taking poor jobs, and so this is this, right? And nobody is wrong, because no one knows what he's thinking, it's all just perception, but to me, I'm going to ask Larry about this, and I'm going to ask Josh again when we redo this video, because I'm really interested in what their different takes were. To me, what he's talking about, to me, it just read as a job that a black person is occupying. Like, your job wasn't necessarily in danger before, but now that the immigration crisis has grown so greatly, they're taking everybody's fucking jobs now. Like, that's to me how it read. Josh Keaton told me that he felt like I was being a little bit too charitable with my interpretation of this. I think that is a perfectly fair take. This is when I'm talking, grew a little bit further. I'll be totally candid. When I was talking to him, I was thinking out loud, and so it grew to talking about tech workers and blah, 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 and Josh was like, that's not what they're talking about. They're not talking about tech workers. Don't be fucking stupid. You're totally right. They're not talking about tech workers. They're talking about regular blue-collar jobs, entry-level positions that you can get if you're fucking illegal, right? So it's very, very interesting. It didn't read to me as a racist thing, but immediately obviously gets picked up on. Now he's being racist. They're taking black jobs now. With the focus of black job, what does this mean? And then it got very, very funny and memey and all this type of stuff. To me, it just reads as a job that a black person happens to be occupying. Like, there isn't a job that I can think of that's like, yeah, black people have this job. Like, there isn't an industry that I can think of like that. You could do an entry-level job, blue-collar job. I work an entry-level job. That's So that's why it doesn't, to me, read as a race-based thing, because the vast majority of people I know who don't work for the government work an entry-level job that if you were illegal and had the wrong boss, you could get hired there. Like, it doesn't, if my boss didn't care, there would be nothing to stop them from hiring an illegal and them working my job. It's not, there's nothing, you don't have to be a fucking American to work at Bennick. Like, sorry, as far as skill goes, you know, you do legally have to be an American to work at Bennick. But it's just a very interesting thing, this black jobs thing. Okay, and this is that clip that I was talking about earlier when they're talking about taxing the rich, when Joe Biden is talking about taxing the rich to try and save Social Security. So I think this is a really interesting point. I'm not going to hammer on it too much because I already addressed it. This is wrong. You're a piece of shit. You're a thief. But I want you guys to hear what he's talking about.
I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So a thing that they're never ever going to see. Let's just keep stealing from people so we can give them, not ever give them anything back for it. I just don't. I'm obviously not in favor of taxes, right? I think that it's theft. I think that it's wrong. If we're going to play the game where we're operating in a world where the government exists, and this is the reality of it, right? Where we're operating this structure as opposed to a fantasy of like what I would prefer. I think the move is to incentivize people to pay taxes, right? You give them benefits based off of their interactions with the government that get them to give you more money, right? That seems like it makes the most sense to me. Instead of stealing from people, make it a positive experience. We can give you this thing if you give us the X amount of tax dollars for us to run this program, right? And there's obviously concerns with that when you're talking about like deals with the government and stuff like that, but this seems like it's just as clear as anything else that's going on in politics that they're glad-handing, they're doing backdoor deals with the different billionaires and trillionaires, or billionaires, so they can try and get legislation passed. It doesn't read as that much different to me, especially if it's transparent, that we can see fucking Jeff Bezos is being given X amount of dollars off of this, you know, property taxes on this place or location on this thing because he agreed to give us this many billions of dollars to run this program for this many years. Like, it seems about as morally clear as what we're doing right now, but at least that's transparent. We know where it's coming from. We know where it's going to, at least in theory, again, as much as we do now. I don't see what the problem is with this. It's the same thing on a much smaller level with elective taxes. You can pay what taxes you want. We're going to show you what they go to. This is your share for this thing. If you want to access this service, if you want the fire department to come when your house burned down, you pay this tax every year. This gets filtered into your tax bill, and we can adjust this cost, and we will just take it to your check, just like we're doing now, right? Nothing needs to be any different except you choose in the beginning of the year what you want to pay for that year. This seems very straightforward to me. But at the end, again, if you choose to not pay the cops, right, because you don't want to, and that's fine, and your house gets robbed and you want someone to do something about it, you're fucked, right? That was on you. You chose not to pay these things. Maybe those things are just straight across the board. Nobody gets to opt out of those things. But past that, you know, these different programs, shit like that, like, if you don't want to pay for this, that's fine. Planned Parenthood or whatever the fuck, right? If you don't pay for that, that's fine. But if something happens and you need an abortion or you need birth control and you can't get it, you don't get to go to Planned Parenthood. This seems very straightforward to me. It doesn't seem like that difficult of a concept, and it seems like an easier way to get people to give you money if that's what the goal is. What the fuck do I know? I'm just a guy in my fucking studio garage. Okay, things start to get a little dicey here. There's it's like bickery. They're going to start talking about some games and stuff like that. It gets super duper childish. So let's let this run for a minute.
Said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession, and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
President Biden, thank you so much. Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford. President Trump, both you and President Biden.
No, you're the fucking worst because of inflation and because of this and because of this. And this just starts this degradation into horrific fucking back and forth childish behavior that we'll see from them. So let's see. Okay, now we're getting some questions about health and age. This is where it's going to start to really go downhill.
Billions and billions of dollars because this guy pays it every time. We had 2 cases where he paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out, and I paid essentially nothing.
Just talking about how to get...
Thank you, President Trump. Down.
Let's turn to concerns that voters have about each of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less confident.
What the fuck does that say? What does that say, though? This is all you've done ever. This is the only thing you've ever done, and you fucking suck at it. It took you 60 fucking years to get to the top. 60 fucking years. Kamala Harris sucked dick to get herself to VP in 10. Come on, man.
I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought an awful lot of people. Well, the whole idea of computer chips. We used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States. And guess what? Those fabs, they call them, to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single...
Who says this? Donald Trump never said this. This is never a thing that Donald Trump says. So make America great again. America's number one. That's like the marked difference between the two of them that I believe. Joe Biden doesn't believe America's number one. Donald Trump does believe that America is number one. Who the fuck is he talking about?
Major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us. All of our allies and those who he cuddles up to, from Kim Jong-un, he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's it. Anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8. But I have, how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to...
I forgot, man. There's just so much There's so much here. It says something that Donald Trump is the first person besides Dana Bash to say, let's not fucking be childish, right? That Joe Biden is so degraded in his mental capacity that he can't even, the politics that is Joe Biden, because that's all that exists inside of him is politics. Just a physical, a distilled, solidified, calcified hunk of politics that is the core of Joe Biden, that holds up this corporeal form that they needed. Right? That's all that exists there. Even that cannot be pulled from this ridiculousness that they're fucking involved in, talking about handicaps and golf and fucking driving distances and all this bullshit, right? At the end of the day, this is your president. One of these two people is your president, and this is fucking what you get. This is what you get when you take a part of this fucking bullshit system when you can't win. There's no way. Win. Tell me here who's the winner. Do you win if you pick one of these people? Who wins? Not you, not me. You can't vote your way out of this. There's no way that this system is what's going to save you. It's impossible. It's impossible. This is what's holding you down. This is what is the yoke that has us all being pressed down to the ground because it's made for a fucking animal that we are not. This is the reality. This is what is happening here. This will never be the winning strategy. This thing that we're taking a part in, that we're fooling ourselves somehow that this show, this game that we play every 4 years is changing our lives in a way that's going to benefit us. This is a lie. This is all a rigged fucking game in which they are giving you the candidates. They're telling you who you can and can't vote for. They're making this decision for you before you've even thought about it. You're still going to watch it. You're still going to, and I'm not exempt. I watched too, but not to make up my fucking mind so that I can sit here and help you guys have not that I'm, some sort of enlightened being, but to help you see through the bullshit that this is fake. None of this is real. This is a completely fabricated thing that we're taking part in, and we're fooling ourselves. You're tricking yourself if you think that this is going to change anything, that this will make your life better. Either of them will make your life better. You're lying to yourself. This is not where the debate ended. As you can see, there's still, 6 more minutes or something like that? 6, 8, 14 more minutes that are left in this. This is where it ends for us, because that's all that matters. This is the only thing that matters in the end, is that this is what your two presidents are, your two choices. At the end of the day, this is what they are. And you did this, we did this to ourselves. If we don't hold anybody to account, if there's nothing that gets done, if we just allow things to continue, we get fucked over, we eat shit and we move on, this is what you get. This is what the rest of your life is going to look like every 4 years, is this fucking picture right here. And it's disgusting.